Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the East Lyme Board of Finance regular meeting. Today is Wednesday, February 8th at 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is delegations, and I see we have more people here than normal, and so I just, in case anyone here is looking to speak tonight, just wanted to point out the way our meeting works with delegations. That's where anyone can address an item that's on our agenda for this evening, and then at the end of the agenda, we have the meeting. We have the public discussion, where anyone can speak to something that comes under the purview of the Board of Finance. And if they do want to speak, we do look to keep their comments to a 5 minutes per speaker. So, is there anyone here who wants to speak to an item on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to next item is the approval of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from Wednesday, January 11th?
I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of January 11th, 2023.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any comments, corrections? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Next, we have reports. We have our first selectman, Mr. Kevin Siri.
Thank you, Denise.
You closed it for the noise and I'm opening it.
Okay, that's all right, Karen. Thank you. And first, just to remember, a little over a week ago, a former first selectman and still very active in the town, Beth Hogan, passed away. We moved her picture front and center right back there. Beth served as first selectman from 2005 to 2007, was on the Board of Selectmen before that. After that, she served on the Board of Finance and most recently on the Charter Revision Commission and the Pension Board. So Beth was a wonderful individual, always had a smile, and whenever you talked to her, she made you feel as if you were the most important person in the world. If you disagreed with her, as soon as that was over, it was the smile came back to her face and asked about your family and how things were going. She did share one story about a month after I took off. She said, have you gotten the complaints yet about, my garbage wasn't picked up. I have put the can out there on time, but it wasn't picked up. Why? So I said, yeah, I've gotten that. Then she said, what about when the traffic backs up at the Four Corners because there's an accident on Route 95? And she said, and it's your fault. Have you gotten those? I said, yes, I have. And she said, and then there'll be the bad days after that. But that was typical for Beth. And her services are, calling hours are this Friday at Neal & Brothers from 12 to 2. I would imagine, and I know there'll be a large turnout for that. She's a very nice person, and we just hope her spirit lives on for a long time in the community. We got the governor's preliminary budget, or the governor's budget today, and this is a long way from being approved because I've already talked to Holly Cheeseman. Right now, based on our budget, we estimated a certain amount of state revenue through grants. The current one is $544,000 less than we had anticipated in our budget. $248,000 of that is educational cost-sharing money. There's already a House bill in place to restore that money for the ECS. And one of the co-sponsors of it is the House Speaker, so I'm confident that'll move forward. So this is not unusual. It does happen a lot when it happens. So, if people see that, don't get word yet. Holly Cheeseman, Martha Marks are very supportive of restoring it back to where it was this year, as well as some other areas too. For our biggest, I've given our budget request to my budget to the Board of Selectmen to review. The biggest increase we have next year that we cannot avoid is debt service, which is up $1.57 million for next year. That's because of bonds that we already have, plus the bonds for the elementary school additions, renovation, and the public safety building are coming online. So that's a big hit for us next year, 1.57. Also, healthcare costs are estimated to be an increase of about $251,000. And with some FICA increases, we're looking at $349,000 total. So the budget before we even start is $1.9 million ahead of where it was last year, which is 2/3 of a mil. We're working to reduce that. For instance, the police had asked for 2 more people. I've already cut it to 1. No, it's at 2 right now, and fire had requested 2. It's down to 1. And here again, more and more calls because the biggest growing population in town is seniors over 55. I'm approaching that age myself. It's okay to laugh at that one too, because everyone knows I'm way past that. Is the calls are increasing and so forth like that, and the demands. And I get the calls, I see them at times. There's 3 or 4 calls within 15 or 20 minutes for each other of each other. So some challenges there that we'll be looking, but here again, we're always going to do everything we can to provide the best service for everybody in the town. It's one town. We'll come together and do what's right for everyone. On some good news, on some other news too, we're going to be talking at the Board of Selectmen about instituting some fees for fire marshal inspections and permits, because right now we're the only town in the region that has never done that. So we're going to look at instituting those. Here again, you're only charging those people that utilize the service, and upgrading our building inspection, our building permit fees and inspection fees. Right now, we're the lowest in the area, and we estimate that between the two of them will probably generate conservatively $100,000 a year in revenue. So right now, that would be something we'd love to do. On some good news, we're looking also at putting a couple EV charging stations down in the public parking lots in downtown here. Right now, Eversource has a plan. It'll be about a $95,000 program. We'd have to pay $14,000, and we are allowed to charge once they're up. Most towns, Old Saybrook, Clinton, Guilford, several towns that have these. They're used constantly. I think Clinton was free. Now they've charged. People complained a little bit, but they're still using them all the time. And it's not something as really a revenue generator, it's just to pay the cost, but it's a service that I think as time goes on, we'll be glad we have if we do that. The 161 corridor study, which is from the high school entrance down to Main Street here, we had an update from them. Right now, at the high school entrance, which is where we'll start, they're recommending widening the road, putting in a dedicated left turn lane if you're coming up in the morning to turn into there. They figure that'll help ease off the traffic significantly. They said, sorry, Jeff, on this one, but they do not see the justification for a traffic signal there. So they said just that short period, and the studies would show that that extra lane would probably help out. There will be sidewalks basically from the high school on the westbound side, the side where Walgreens is, Stop and Shop, that side of the road, from basically the high school all the way down to 156. They're talking about extending the sidewalk by Gorton Pond. They're even looking to see if they can do a little boardwalk. This is probably 5 or 6 years down the road, but it's in the planning stages. They talked about where East Pat, Chapman Farms, and 161 come together, putting a roundabout. We all kind of went, to that one, because I'm not so sure of that. But a bike path, there'll be bike areas, but they don't have the areas to be able to put that in by the pond. They'd have to route bikers up Society to Riverview and down Roxbury back in, because they just can't get it wide enough in that area because of some of the constraints in the area. But this is ongoing, and there'll be another update coming up soon where it's, the public's invited to come and give their concerns. Dominion Building. The Yale Charrette are going to probably in the next month or so coming up with some conceptual designs for that. So what it would look like if the town kept the property and put something up there, and possibly an overlook to where you'd be up high overlooking the bay. What it would look like if it was kind of mixed, to where the town built a facility and rented it out, or if it went totally commercial. And they said that's the one where we have the least control over. but there'll be a presentation to the community to see what would be in the best interest and what people feel about. If we keep it and then rent out the facility, don't get as much tax revenue. But here again, we've been living without that revenue for a long time now anyway. So we'll see what the best, and Dominion has been really great at letting us work on this as well, as far as not rushing us, hey, come up or we're going to sell it. They've been really, really good. You saw the thing in the newspaper about making the building here more ADA accessible. It's been a long time coming. The two biggest problems are going to be, not biggest, but task would be making the bathrooms accessible, and then putting in a lift, which is basically an elevator, but because we can call it a lift, which doesn't involve as much and is a lot less expensive. We're the ones that brought that up. They were not telling us we had to do it, but we figured if we're going to do this, let's do it right once and for all. This building is not very friendly to handicapped people, especially if you're constrained in your mobility, so we need to do that. And they were really good. They've given us 33 months starting from July 1st, and there is some funding in that in the capital plan for next year. I think that's pretty much it. Looking at everything here. Yep. I think that's it. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Siri. Next on the agenda is the superintendent, Mr. Newton.
Good evening, everyone. Jeff Newton, superintendent, and 53 Arbor Crossing here in East Lyme. Couple of updates just to provide you a kind of a spin-off of what our first selectman talked about with legislative discussions. I've been to a few legislative meetings recently, two in the last month. Some good, robust discussion with both Holly Cheeseman and Martha Marks and others in relation to special education funding, excess cost, as well as the loss of educational cost-sharing dollars that for East Lyme. So hopefully, as our first selectman said, those monies will be reinstated, which would be great. So we need those dollars. On another note, with the governor's budget that came out today, tomorrow there's a vote to reinstate free lunches for all students. So it looks like that potentially could go through. So all students across the state of Connecticut would return to free lunch. I don't know for how long, at least for the rest of this year, this school year. So we'll see where that goes, and that continues to provide us with a healthy surplus in our food service account. And unfortunately, you can't transfer those dollars over to other things we'd love to help transfer and offset costs with. So, but that obviously would be good for kids and back to free lunch potentially. So I anticipate that will happen tomorrow. So we'll see. We are working to budget. Really has been the story of the last couple of weeks for us, both deficit as well as next year's budget. For next year's budget, the Board of Ed has been engaging in a lot of robust conversations and discussions over the last few meetings that we've had. A lot of turnout from the community and staff. So some really good engaging conversations and feedback that we received. Some of you were at that December budget workshop where we talked about, we were at the 10.30, and we were looking that that's high. And at that time, we had some good conversations about the fact that how do we work that number down some. Hence, I worked it down to the 6.97, and the Board of Ed is reviewing that feverishly right now, and we'll see where that goes as it pertains to much of the feedback that's come forward from staff. So next Monday evening, 6 o'clock, there'll be an open, we're calling it kind of a coffee talk or budget discussion that will happen in the Commons at the high school, 6 to 7 o'clock. I would encourage Board of Finance members and Board of Selectmen and any members of our community to join us for that conversation. I know if you have a quorum, Denise, we might need to file that, but we're filing it as a special meeting. So we encourage you to join us. Board of Ed members will be there, hopefully community members as well, and then the Board of Ed will meet after that in another special meeting at 7 o'clock specific to the budget and continue their ongoing discussions. And then timeline-wise, February 27th is when the hearing will take place, a public hearing on the Board of Ed budget, and then the meeting to follow after that. So the Board of Ed at that point will finalize next year's budget and send it on to the Board of Selectmen. So that's the components of next year's budget. This current year, I provided you a sheet that we had provided first to the Board of Education on the current deficit. The number keeps coming down. It was at 677,000, down to 286,000 and change, 286, 126, 66. That's including if the town would agree to releasing the remaining LEARN funds that are here. I think there's about 17,000 left in remaining funds that are unused. We look to apply that, to this deficit. It makes sense, and hope continue to bring that number down, and that's our continued work. We've seen some progress with that, obviously, and as the year has rolled on, it's been easier to really close out POs, understand, where we are fiscally with this year, and that sheet provided kind of a breakdown for you that we had provided to the Board of Ed as to how we're continuing to get there. And one of the nice things is the winter that we're having. There's been no overtime, there's been no plowing, there's minimal salt. I think this morning was the first time we've thrown salt in quite a while. So there's been quite a bit of savings there as well. So that's about it. Any questions at all for me? Yeah, Rich.
Yes. The projected deficit,
Mhm.
I know that we had the virus remediation. Is that included within this deficit calculation, or
No.
will that be additional cost?
Nope, that's not included. We're still working with the Board of Ed as to how we're going to potentially fund the final cost or work it into next year's contract. So we have some options with that, which we're working through.
Oh, okay. And listening to the Board of Ed meeting, I kind of tuned in by Zoom. There was a lot of concern about the technology areas within the curriculum. And I'm just wondering how we're going with the restoration of the planetarium, because there's a group that's already got the projector and has staff trained within their organization. And as long as the town is going through ADA compliance remediation here at Town Hall, I was just wondering where we might be standing with restoration planetarium.
Well, the only thing that we have done as part of that, the planetarium project and initiative, was to hold the space, which we've done. There's been no request to renovate the room or do any reconfigurations. We haven't had a meeting in a long time, but there is one that has been requested. Coming up soon.
March. We're looking at the beginning of March.
So the beginning of March will be some startup conversations again as to how that is going to look. I think it's shifted some. I don't have all the specifics, but we'll know more in March.
Okay, yeah, because I was just thinking that in terms of organizations being able to apply for grants, sometimes it helps in that regard, and then also the coordination of ADA compliance for what is the current planetarium. And speaking of grants, I noticed in the New London Day that I believe it was Stonington and Preston had received competitive grants from the state to address mental health issues due to the COVID and impact of COVID. Did we apply for any grants?
No, our focus right now is we're trying to work and establish a partnership with a community foundation. So we went and looked at another district 2 weeks ago that has a medical and mental health facility within the school. So I've reached out to a second one I was in contact with yesterday, and the first one that we're with, they are researching our numbers, basically, how many crisis calls we've had, crisis situations. So that's going to be our focus. I'd be concerned about grant funding, Rich, bringing in staff, losing the grant funding, and then what do we do? That's the concern. I think we've built a pretty robust mental health support right now. That's something we want to keep within our budget. There's always room for improvement and growth, but watching and seeing what happens with ARP and ESSER funding and other grant funding, it's tough to keep those things moving along. But this will be a partnership we can keep in place.
Okay.
We talked about it at one of the workshops.
Okay. Yeah, I just thought that and I'm glad that you're following up on that because I brought that up.
Oh yeah,
But,
that's right. That's right. You talked about that. Yeah.
But in terms of the services that you've put in place, I just thought the grants could kind of help relieve the pressure valve from those ARPA positions, or ESSER, or however we want to call them, that kind of twilight out, and that it would have been an additional source of funding that could have been available. I've contacted both Holly and Martha.
Good. Okay.
That it seems as though all school districts have the same issue, And so could we advance it in the state that it would be direct funding for schools rather than a competitive grant?
Be great.
I see that there's a second series of grants coming, I think, for $15 million. So
That'd be great. And the school security grant offering just came out again, which is super, so we'll be applying for those funding. There is a matching, it's a matching grant though. So we have to get the percentage of what we'd have to pay. But there's upgrades in cameras and upgrades in other things that we're in need of.
okay, thank you.
So, yeah, yep. Any other questions?
Just, so I know this is the projected deficit for June 30th. Do you think your numbers are a little conservative? Do you think that you'll be able to wheedle this down a little more?
I can say I hope so. And I can't, say for sure that it's going to, continue to go in that direction. That's our goal. That's our continued work and efforts. Just can't say that, tomorrow a significant issue could come into play and it's a cost. But at this point, that's where we've been with the freeze and everything. We're working to get that number down. So, and we'll hope to have more as, we wind out, we're finalizing getting, the rest of January's numbers and February's numbers. And I know really we're going to have some conversations in March because that would be the time frame potentially for coming for a special appropriation if we were to do so. So that's where we're at. So we'll give you another report in a month. And if I hear anything sooner or anything we report to the Board of Ed, I'm happy to provide to you afterwards.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anything else for? All set.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is our Director of Finance, Mr. Gervais.
This is where you're going to get your grade.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Kevin Day. There it goes. There we go.
all right. We'll get that projector working for the next meeting.
And I neglected to say at the beginning of the meeting that I wanted to welcome Patrick Conaway here, who is helping us out. And in past meetings, we've been trying to work the controls up here ourselves, and it's a little difficult to follow along with the meeting while you're also trying to figure out screens. So we're very appreciative that you're here, and you're doing a great job so far.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. All right, so this is my 6th Board of Finance presentation, but who's counting? This is the 6th time I'm going to be talking about some of these, and we're going to take some of these off the agenda for future. So let's dive in here. So Nova Time went live last week. We had a little snafu and paid our people a day late, but this week we got it out on time, so there's all happy campers in the building right now. Munis, we are still working with the project implementation team. I sent them some more paperwork last night, so hopefully we'll get the ball moving on that now that the Nova time and attendance is all taken care of. Purchase cards. The state of Connecticut finally sent us the purchase cards, so we have to do some training with department heads and individuals that have the purchase cards, but we hope to roll that out in the next 2 weeks or so. Clicking right through here on myself. So with the audit, last night at about 1:30 in the morning, I emailed Ron Nossick asking for an update on the audit, and he emailed me at 5:55 this morning, give or take, and said they have a call today, they're working on it. The reviewer at the national level still has a few things he's not comfortable signing off on, so they keep answering their viewers' questions. So I email him twice a day, and hopefully I'm enough of a thorn on his side I'm going to resort to calling here if I don't get it very soon. So he gives me status updates, so we're working through it. I was hoping to have it done for tonight, but I anticipate tomorrow. I'm hoping not Friday, so I'm really hoping we get this taken care of tomorrow. And then we dive into 21. So that's all I will say about that. So, ongoing discussions, we've talked about this. The grant fund I'm looking to establish, I'd like to do that before the July 1st meeting, so we don't have to do special appropriations for all the grants that are in the general fund, like the nuclear safety, NCSP, whatever the acronym for that was. Grants like that, if we just put it in the grant fund, once the boards approve it, it's there until we expend the money. And it doesn't have to go back in front of you guys until the next round of funding. Bringing additional resources, we've talked about that. The deputy finance director, that's still in the budget. Knock on wood there. So diving in, I feel like I always give you the doom and gloom. So I want to talk about the positives of the budget tonight. So we have a number of revenue accounts that are over budget in a good way. So I don't have it listed here, but I just want to talk about some of them and give some department shout outs for bringing in more revenue. First one, the First Selectman's Office, 800% of the miscellaneous revenue. The budget was $25, and he's brought in $200 so far. So we are, congratulations there for bringing in the revenue. So now, so I gave Friday and Monday. Monday was like the 5th. Was it the 7th? It was either the 5th or the 6th. All the days are blending together. But it's early on in the month end. So the accounts receivable clerk and the tax collector were working on closing the month. So you guys have numbers in front of you. I believe about $60 million for taxes taken in. As of today, we've taken it $63,150,000. So we've taken in 97.1% of the taxes, which is phenomenal. So I really think that we'll go above 100% there. Just not quite sure what the dollar amount is. I should look back for a couple years, but the problem is last year we had a tax sale, so that kind of messes with the projections, because we drove everyone to pay all the bills, so there's not as many of the old bills for the prior year interest and stuff like that, so it's kind of hard to project for those. But some other departments, recycling, we budgeted 62, we're already at over 70. Zoning fees, we budgeted 25, we're over 31. Town miscellaneous, we budgeted 2,000. I've got to look what's in there, but that's at 70,000. Building permits, 455 we budgeted. We're at almost 320, which is 70%, so that's over 10% of where we should be at this period of time. And that was also driven, so I talked to David Garside, the new building official, in was it October or November, Kevin, you can correct me. We had like I don't know, or KZ, because she works down there, the office, there was a big run in, I think, November to get money in for the deadline.
Because October 1st, the state building code took effect.
And so a lot of people wanted to get all their permits in before that deadline.
New homes.
The new homes, yeah. So we received a lot of revenue for that, so that's good. So quite a bit of our accounts are over on the revenue side. So I just wanted to share that. So it's always good when we're bringing in more revenue. So on the expenses side, we do have some accounts that have savings. Historic properties, building maintenance, I think they spent $150 of a $7,000 budget line. Brookside Farms, there's some savings there. Part-time dispatchers, overtime in the dispatch line. I didn't have time to do a projection for the police, but it appears that the police overtime is slowing down as far as the weekly amounts coming from that line. So that made me feel a little better. Public Works, the storm overtime, storm materials. Kevin, knock on wood. I'm not going to say nothing. I'm just saying that's in the positive. So, not going to jinx it. And then just some accounts that are over, the primary and the referendum line for the registrars, that is fully expended, and we still have the budget referendum to go, so that account will be at least 7,000 or 8,000 over. So what other account did I write here? Legal fees for planning, that's a $4,500 line item. it's, I think, $5,000. It's a couple $100 over, but we just have to monitor that through the rest of the year and see where that comes out. So that's really it. Oh, and then if you look at your, the revenue sheet, it only adds up to about 180,000 of interest income. So far we've collected $242,000 of interest income. We didn't have some of the statements yet, so it wasn't booked until a day or so ago. So the real interest income number is $242,000.
Just so let them know what we had budgeted for this year.
20,000. So we're doing well there. And there's a slide here that has the interest income projection. So next month I put this in here to remind myself when I do the presentation. Oh crap! I got to get this done. The salary contingency's got to get broken out. So there was 3 retro pays this year for these 3 unions. And then we've hired some department heads at either higher amounts or lower amounts than the prior department heads. So we just need to do a giant transfer. So I'll do an Excel work paper and we'll transfer some money out of the salary contingency lines to the appropriate lines. That'll go through the Board of Selectmen first. So, all right, interest income projection. It's down a little bit. I'm looking to be about $425,000 to $430,000 for this year, I had to play with the numbers a little bit. If you have a prior copy with you, you'll notice for the January collections, I believe I had $27 million, and then I had less in the subsequent months of revenue collection. When I actually looked at January, we only collected like $22 million and some change because it's spread out amongst February through June. So I kind of took some of the cash out of the January collections to match the closer to the actual, and then projected out the other months. So we don't have as big of a pot of cash in January collecting all that interest. It comes in a little at a time, but not as much of that big old pot I was hoping to have sit there. But I mean, we still have 38 million sitting in the bank, so I'm fine with that. That's a good enough interest for me. All right, so we talked about this last year. I just updated some of the healthcare costs. They're estimating 8 to 10% now. And Kevin already talked about the fire marshal bringing in some inspection and planning fees from them. Some other departments that we've been talking about, building department, updating the codes and regs for them. Zoning is looking at as well. So we have a couple different departments looking at the surrounding communities and seeing where we are in terms of fees and services. So, and then just some highlights of the first selectman's budget, some of the cuts we made to the capital projects, the general fund, and then just to talk about, like Kevin talked about earlier, the governor's budget. They did make some cuts on us, but they're proposed, so we're hoping they get added right back in. So we're just going to continue monitoring that. So that's all I got, I think. That's it. Probably my shortest one yet. Oh, and just real quickly, I will say, the fund balance projection sheet. You'll notice the numbers dropped a little bit. That is because when I reviewed so I had a conversation with the Board of Ed, Mariana and Jeff about litigation at the Board of Ed, and there should have been some money set aside in the assigned fund balance. And I asked the auditor, and he said, that's okay, that was from 2 years ago, but I said, well, shouldn't you bring it forward one more year? And so he made a correction, so that correction is shown there in the $10,842,000 on the top left corner there. The number was over 11 million. I can't remember exactly. The difference is about the $500,000 that you see at the bottom there, the use of the fund balance. The middle, 543,778. So, and I believe it's 537.
537.
Okay, but I had that number on the paper, so I just said carrying the extra 6,000. So I feel like it was easier just to have the extra 6,000 in case something pops up. So, any questions?
So that brings our fund balance down to 13.79%.
Starting, yep, and then the ending fund balance projected 14.3. So, yeah. Yeah, we took it, we had to take that half a
Yeah.
million out of there and put it in assigned fund balance. So,
So in our, when we finished with the budget process last year, we were saying that we had a 15%
it doesn't appear
And-
so.
and we didn't, so that's,
So, any questions?
no. That's good. No.
I'm gonna get out of here while I can.
Well, don't go. So next on the agenda is our new business, which is the assessor. We got the grand list. And so,
Hi.
Diane, welcome.
Diane Vitagliano, assessor. And I am proud to present the numbers to you. I believe they've all been disseminated to you, but this gives me the opportunity to speak to them out loud. For our personal property grand list, the number is 77,520,716, and that is up 1.5% over last year. Our motor vehicle grand list is 215,680,729, and that is actually up 5.84% over last year. A lot of those new cars finally came in that were on back order from COVID. And our real estate grand list is at 2,503,901,683, and that represents a 0.82% increase for a total grand list of 2,797,103,128, which is a 1.21% increase over last year's grand list. Do you have any questions?
I was just curious. I know when we had the reval last year, we had seen movement where commercial properties were assessed less than they had been, and residential had gone higher. I was just wondering whether you have any insight. Do we see home values still staying at the same levels where they had been last year when you had so much movement, everybody was still, looking to work from home and all that? Are you seeing those, I guess, property values in the residential area still as high as they had been?
Yes, I had thought that the property values would have come down a little bit more than they have, but our sales ratios show that as of right now, a lot of the sale prices continued to rise. And, I'm sure we'll start to see a rollback of that. But we have, our real estate numbers are from the reval will stay until the next revaluation, and the increase is the result of the new construction and all of the building permits. So there's been, a great deal of building permits and new construction work in town. And that increase, the real estate increase, was really offset by, we had several large properties go from taxable to exempt. We had a large commercial building go on from taxable to exempt, and we had several large parcels of land that went taxable to exempt. And so those kind of offset some of the increases from the new construction and the building permits. But based on the number of building permits that continue to come in, there have been a lot of them, and so I expect we'll have a very busy spring and summer going out looking at all these building permits and new construction homes.
I have a question.
Sure.
What qualifies a piece of property to go from taxable to exempt?
If it's purchased by an exempt organization and used for an exempt purpose. So Lighthouse Vocational Education purchased 15 Liberty Way, and that's so that parcel, with the exception of this, excuse me, of the cell tower. If you notice when you drive by, there's the tower there.
Yeah.
And they do get significant rent from the cell tower. So that remains taxable, but the rest of the property will become, is exempt.
Okay.
And other properties were purchased by or acquired by the East Lyme Land Trust, and so those became exempt. Anything, that would go to the town or to the state that was taxable would be exempt.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Diane.
Okay, you're welcome.
So, with our unfinished business, I think we've got our update on the audited financial statements. We're still working on the fund balance policy. And then the budget meeting calendar. So we've been talking about getting dates on our schedules for our departmental budget reviews. And so right now, what we're looking at is, so our next regularly scheduled meeting is March 8th. That's our regular Board of Finance meeting. That's when the Board of Selectmen will basically hand over the budget books to us. So then we will then schedule meetings to go through the different departments that we want to go through their budgets. So we're looking at special meetings for March 23rd, March 29th, and April 3rd. And then,
Did you skip the 13th?
so the 13th is actually when the Board of Selectmen have their special
Okay.
budget review meeting. So that, just put in,
That's for the night that Board of Ed will
the
present
Board of
to
Ed
us.
will present to the
Okay.
Board of
And,
Selectmen.
yeah, because we'll get the packet, because we have to deliver the whole budget, including the approved budget from the Board of Ed on March 1st. We'll approve it and get it to you. But, if they adopt on the 27th, a couple days later, we won't really have a chance to go through it and then ask questions. And I think last year was difficult with us asking you to ask the questions that
Yes.
we had. So this way, there's plenty of time for them to present to us on the 13th and then get our comments to you.
And so these three special meetings, those dates will be for town departments, and then been speaking with Jeff Newton about scheduling a date for when the Board of Ed would then present their budget to the Board of Finance. So I know we were thinking potentially March 28th, but I think this room is in use that night. So I don't know.
Water and sewer meets that night, but we could. Yeah, water and sewer meets on the 28th. We could possibly move that meeting into, that doesn't have to be in here.
Okay.
But let me talk to them first before I offer up the room.
Okay, so we'll talk, and we'll talk tomorrow, but kind of circle that up for the Board of Ed presentation. Yes. And then, I know I had emailed everybody to say, kind of come prepared to think about which departments they wanted to review. I know I have mine, and I can start, and then if it doesn't, if there's something that you guys were looking at and I didn't add it in, then we can throw it together. So I have Department 104, Building, 109, IT, 113, Building Maintenance, 114, General Government, 115, Services to the Community, 118, Finance, 126, Board of Finance, then the whole public safety, so 2014, or 214, 215, 216, 17, 18, 24, and 26. So that group. 317, Public Works. 418, Commission on Aging. 420, Library. 421, Parks and Rec. 522 and 23 for debt. 724 for capital. CNRE and revenue as well, and then the Board of Ed. So, do you guys have anything you wanted to add to that?
You hit the ones that I want. Rich?
I'm fine.
So then, we can work together to figure out how to do that in such a way to make it easy for any of our department heads to kind of do it. And again, I really, really want to strongly encourage everyone. You know, I'm sure we will have the same questions that the Board of Selectmen will have when they go through this. Their meetings are also televised. So to the extent that you have time and can just dial into their meetings, and then hopefully that means, you know, we will get most of our questions answered prior to them. And, you know, it could even be that we're able to knock some off altogether if we feel like we have all the information we need from those meetings. But we want them on the agenda for now. Absolutely.
And I think we're doing, obviously, police, emergency management, basically all emergency services and anything related to that will be one night.
Yep.
And Public Works, building, IT, I think we'll have those all the same. Try and get everybody together, you know, that's really related to, because, you know, yeah, it'd be easy enough to do that.
So I'll break those up into 3 meetings, and then we'll have a 4th meeting
For the Board of Ed. Yep. Okay. And obviously, if you guys think of something, you know, feel free to email and say, oh, I forgot this one. Okay. Next is public discussion. So we do offer this as the opportunity for anyone to speak to subjects that come under the purview of the Board of Finance, but we're not on the agenda for that evening. So I do, just in case we have people that are interested in the Board of Ed budget, I just want to point out that they haven't adopted their budget yet. And so, you know, we don't really have any inside information here. And further, the Board of Finance has no ability to dictate how the Board of Ed allocates their funds. The only thing we can do is potentially make a change in the amount that is there, but we're also subject to the minimum budget requirement, so a state law that says we can't cut their budget based upon a formula from the previous year. So the only thing that we could potentially do is change the amount of the proposed increase. So those are the sort of semantics that I keep hearing, like, oh, you're cutting their budget, and I'm like, no, it's not cutting their budget. It's looking to see, you know, how do we come up with a number that works for the Board of Ed, and also, you know, keeps in mind that we have other constituencies in town, and we're trying to balance the needs of the entire town. So it's a lot of work, and we'll do our best, and we welcome your comments. So feel free if anyone would like to speak. I don't think we needed a sign-up sheet, but if anyone would like to come to the podium, please feel free to step up. Just state your name and address. And of course, this is for electors in town, so this would be for people who live in town.
Or people who are taxpayers.
Yeah. for taxpayers in town, yeah. Did you, sure.
Brian Zonstecker, 65 East Patagonia. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. I'm a relatively new resident, been in town for about a year and a half. And thank you, Lauren, for facilitating. Also, recently a land fire, my wife and I. And also appreciate having me. It's my first time at the Board of Finance meeting, so you have to pardon me if I am skipping any of the process that I should be. And apologize in advance, Ryan, if this isn't the appropriate time. If I missed the other comment part, I stuck to the miscellaneous thing just to kind of be on the safe side. And that was also great. Thank you actually for just clarifying there that the sole focus of the board here is essentially to facilitate the budget supplement should it need be, as opposed to cutting and other things that aren't under your purview. That helps in my understanding as a layman. So thank you. I moved here just because my family is, it's a great place to live so far. It's probably about 1% of the next smallest place I ever lived in my life. So it's also a different experience for me. I would have never bothered with this anywhere else, feeling like less than a number. But the reason is that I also, I feel a lot better about my children's future in a place like this for any number of reasons, and the resource provided to the town. And as mentioned, there's reason just bought some land here. And I know, there's a lot of attributes of the town as I come to learn more, and several were explained tonight about particularly, the surprising yet still increase in real estate revenues, and therefore the associated things come with it, like permitting and fees and all that, and the continued growth in new developments, on surprises in the auto tax revenues and all that. Fantastic stuff to hear. Great to hear that a lot of the revenue accounts are favorable to the budget, and you got a healthy 38 million or so in the bank. Also great to hear. And also that you invest in the community, and the developments are an example of that. The EV charging, I'm an electrical engineer who focuses on energy efficiency and sustainable power and all that, so also great to hear. Let me know if you need help with that. And safety resources, as you said, too, which is critical importance to the characteristics of a town, what not only attract the people, but give them peace of mind, like myself. And of course, the top-rated educational system is obviously a big part of that too, and I'm sure that no doubt that's emphasized regularly in town marketing and promotional efforts and anything like that. And I'll say again, it worked. Exhibit A. But so surely we also all recognize that there's no really better return on investment in nearly every measurable and objective way than investing in our most valuable resources, particularly as early as possible, as just Econ 101 tells us for investment in ROI. And certainly I think that correlates a lot to obviously our youngest generations and the most formative years and opportunities for education and growth. And so I'd just like to emphasize, too, that like Superintendent Newton said, I'd also really strongly encourage you to, the whole board and the first selectman and anyone else is appropriate, or whoever's keeping an eye on just the future of education and the future of our children in this community, to attend these upcoming meetings and special sessions of the Board of Education. And also, as Superintendent Newton said, along with Mr. Steele, as you noted, that support and funding of mental health resources and initiatives is, also imperative and a growing need in the community. And when I looked at this from several different angles, whether it's the just what we're putting towards that adds value to our town and attributes, as I was outlining before, or what contributes to increase in costs, like especially major costs in medical insurance premiums and all that, and looking what drives that, growth in terms of the insurance companies' liabilities. I see that mental health is also one of the largest growth areas there. So again, in terms of ROI, right, we know it works both ways. And so also think of not only that youngest generation, but the impact, and especially mental health, of the resources that are also associated and responsible of ensuring that bright future of our children, our education system, and our town. So with that, I thank you very much and appreciate it, and look forward to future endeavors and growing with the town. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Clarify something Kevin said about we have $38 million in the bank. We do, but that's what we pay our bills with. That's not our savings account. That's, because that's money that we've raised through tax revenues, and that'll go down over the next several months. So,
Yeah. So
it's not
basically,
68 million
yeah.
sitting, or 38. Now I've made a lot more now.
Jan-
But anyway, the 38 million will be dropping down.
January and July are
January,
big months
July,
as
when we have a lot of
everybody
money.
pays their
Yeah.
taxes, and then
Exactly. So it's not sitting there.
yeah, and then one of the things that the town will do is invest those funds for short periods of time to generate that interest. But is there? Yeah. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the Board of Finance? Please. And if you could just state your name and address.
Yep. It's Kyle Doughton, 5 Rockwell Street, and I also own J&B Tackle. It's 25 Smith Avenue. I'm here, and I understand that you've been hearing that the Board of Finance is cutting the Board of Education's budget, but we understand that when they send back their proposed budget, we want you to understand more what's in it and what's going on in the town that's affecting that. I spoke at the Board of Selectmen's meeting several weeks ago. They just recently adopted the new affordable housing plan for the town of East Lyme. And in this affordable housing plan, it gives changes in zoning laws that are allowing affordable housing to come into town and be built. And a lot of it's being built by outside contractors, and they get tax credits for using a resource-rich town to build these affordable housing. That's not the only thing that's affecting the budget, but it is one of the major things, and we've seen a huge number of increases in special education costs in the Board of Education's budget. If you look at it year over year, it's, I believe, I have it in another note, but I think it's something like 30% or something like that has increased in the special education budget since 2017. So these are real issues that the Board of Education is dealing with as far as trying to plan out their budget. They've also had a lot of decisions that have been changed by the town that have affected how they can, budget. We went through the school projects, and during that school project, we started at one thing, and it was continually cut down to try to meet what the Board of Finance at that time was asking for. And I know you have a lot of constituents in town, but when they did that, we essentially put Band-Aids. They're glorified Band-Aids, but they're Band-Aids on 3 elementary schools. And now a lot of the things that should have been done during those renovations are coming up, and they're due. Things like roofs and other, that's one of the things that I have in here, but there's other things that were mentioned last night at the meeting. And so now those are coming up as increased costs that they're having to budget in this year's budget that really could have been dealt with before, and it's compounding year after year. The reason you're seeing such a big difference this year is because of the inflation, the added costs. So every time we have to add salaries to the Board of Education's budget for these special educations, and then you have a salary increase, it multiplies out. The same thing with we've had to add security to school systems now. Because of all the school shootings and everything, you've added school security guards. That staff keeps increasing to meet the demands. So as all these things increase, when you have a wage increase, you have a benefits increase, that's multiplying times all those new positions that had to be added. They weren't added in 2023, they were added before this. So I'm just asking, as you see the Board of Education's budget put forward to you, you understand that these expenses are coming out of things that are uncontrollable and not giving back to our child's education. In the entire school budget, when I look through it, I'd love to say that there's nothing benefiting the kids, but there is about a $100,000 literacy program that's being mandated for the state. Other than that, not a lot going back to the kids. Everything that's happening in the budget is coming away from the kids. They're talking about cutting positions. They're talking about cutting technology positions. You have a student here that's running the technology in this room because it's very difficult for us to do. As business owners, as everyone, the technology has increased for what we have to do. We don't have control over the fact that because of the pandemic, we had to add in Zoom. We had to add in all these things. That infrastructure and what it's required to run those is a lot of money, a lot of time, and that's what's needed. But it's not giving to the students. So the Board of Education is finding places to cut. Everywhere they're cutting is coming from the students. It's coming from sports. It's coming from AP classes. It's coming from all the things that the students need. What they're increasing their budget is from uncontrollable things that are happening in society. I don't get too good speaking from a thing, but I did make one note here that said, we aren't looking to educate our kids for yesterday. We're looking for tomorrow. The world is changing rapidly and getting more expensive. They need to be prepared. And that's kind of what I want to sum up, is the fact that they need to be prepared for tomorrow. And a lot of the constituents in town, they're used to what it cost when they went to school, or what they had when they went to school. Unfortunately, through all the changes, we need more for these students. So that's basically the general gist of what I was trying to get across. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Elspeth Dowd from 66 East Patagoncet. I have two children, one of whom goes to center school right now and one of whom will go there next year. My husband, full disclosure, teaches at the high school. And I just want to make a brief remark about the multiple constituents in the town. I've got young children, obviously, and a husband in education, but I also have my in-laws who live in Crescent Beach, Joan and Bernard Dowd. I've got their neighbors, Greg and Gemma Dowd. We have Tom and Ermine Dowd. We have a huge family, and a lot of them are older at this point, but they also have children and grandchildren. And there are so many wonderful multi-generational families in this town, which is fabulous and really leads to a great feeling of community. But when we're talking about multiple constituencies in town, a lot of them are interconnected. I volunteer for the Historical Society, and I've been helping bring grant funds to the Historical Society. Most of their volunteers are older, but I think connecting those older volunteers to the younger people in town is another great goal. And I just want to make sure that we're not looking at our town's finances as a zero-sum game, and I'm sure you're not, and I just wanted to emphasize that what's good for our kids can also be good for our older generations as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do I have anyone else who'd like to speak? Nope. Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is board comments. Does anyone have anything that they want to share? No? Richard?
Yeah. Elizabeth, I want to thank you for what you brought up about the intergenerational benefits that we see. That's something that is very important. I volunteer at a long-term care center and rehab center, and it's nice to be able to see the benefit that young people can bring to our senior citizens and our older citizens. I think those are very important. You also mentioned grants with the Historical Society. I think grants are a very important part of what our potential future budgets can be. I know our finance director has mentioned the idea of a purchasing agent in town to help increase our purchasing power and get greater efficiency in terms of pricing and in terms of benefits for what we expend. I think as well, a grant writer within town, whether it be part of that purchasing agent position or a separate position, would bring potential benefits to the town, to the schools, and to the town. I know that we've had some revenue lost from the high school. That there was a Chinese school there that met on Sundays, and they chose to go to Waterford this last year. That was a potential loss of revenue, plus a potential loss of volunteers. I think a lot of the areas where we're looking to enhance our children's education, I think volunteerism could really benefit for that. It's a tough situation this year, and the reason I brought up the planetarium was in terms of what our first selectman had mentioned about the old police station and development of that for the town, and the charrette study for that, as well as the movie theater that's kind of gone under. Part of Main Street's charge is also to take care of Flanders. And I think the development of a planetarium at the high school would greatly enhance the development of the Flanders businesses. It would increase restaurants, it would increase other supportive services around there. And I think we are at a point where budgets are stretched, and we just need to kind of get creative and see how best we can service our children and service our community. I appreciated, Elspeth, that you had mentioned about the zero-sum game, that it's all interconnected. And East Lyme's always worked well as a community, and I hope that it will continue to do so. Thank you.
Couple comments.
Yep, sure.
I didn't write down your name. The gentleman that spoke about cuts coming from the students and the increased costs are not benefiting the students. I heard that, and our challenge is not only do we have to grapple with those kinds of conflicts, but we also have to take the cost of running the town against the raising our job is to set the tax rate, which is not a pleasant job, no matter how we look at it. So we have that, and then keeping our bond rating, so there's a lot of, those are two factors that are important, but there's also others that we have to consider. I don't have the answer right now, and that's what but I want you to know that I heard that, I hear that, I appreciate that, and I think that was a really good point, that, we have all these competing forces, and somehow we have to come up with a solution that takes, the taxpayers and the increased costs that we don't have control over, and all that. It's a difficult situation, and I thank you for appreciating that.
Anyone else? No, thank you. Very nice comments. All right, that's it. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
So if you have a